Well, welcome back to the Pastor Pod. We're so glad you've taken some time to jump in with us for another episode. I'm here with my good friend Jay. And if you don't know much about the Pastor Pod, really, it's pastors, leaders having open and honest conversations, and really to let you in on what pastors really think about stuff. So, Jay, what's up? How's it going?
All right, man. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Doing well. I'm
How's the
excited about
family
today's
in
episode,
Sunshine, Florida?
we are good, man. It's nice and toasty already. And
I wish it was that way. It was freezing 28 when I woke up this morning. 28.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So, Josh, I can't tell you how excited I am about today's podcast. We were at Exponential a couple weeks ago, and you introduced me to our guest today. You introduced me to your executive pastor, Alan Smith, and let me tell you, I was jealous at first. First of all, I almost had to remind me, what is an XP? What is an executive pastor? Because I don't have one of those.
Right.
And so we identified that you really hit the mother. You have the golden goose of ministry.
It's true. It's true. We went over that at Exponential. It was an amazing conversation. But I am really excited to have Alan on today. He is joining us from his office. I'm across the office in my room, and so glad that he's with us. He's become a great friend, and we've worked together for almost a little over 2 years.
That's right.
And he's got a great family. So, Alan, welcome to the Pastor Pod.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Can I just point this out for those who are not watching on YouTube, that his office is way nicer than your office, from what I can tell.
It's a lot cleaner.
Yeah, maybe that's
I got so much free time. That's why.
Oh, see, the difference is you guys are in your offices. I'm in my basement. That gives you a little picture of the differences in ministry life right now. So yeah, we're excited to have Alan here on the podcast. We really want to have a good conversation today about this unique role, the unique, relationship between an executive pastor and the lead pastor. And really, I'm going to lean into you guys a lot. I don't have that role here. I've been in churches where there is an executive pastor, but I was a youth pastor, so it wasn't really a close relationship like that. I didn't have the executive pastor of youth ministry. Wait a minute. Could that be a thing?
That could be a thing.
So every youth pastor right now is like, I heard on this podcast, Pastor, I heard on this podcast, I need an executive pastor of youth.
I'm going to go to the board and I'm going to convince them I need an executive pastor.
All right. In all seriousness, Alan, again, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Listen, you've been doing this for how long? How long have you been an executive pastor, Alan?
Gosh, over 20 years now. Yes.
Over 20 years of experience. I've only been married 16. Oh, man. You started when I was 20. How about that? That's great. I'm trying to make him feel old, Josh.
I'm there.
No, Alan. So look, you're bringing 20 years of ministry to the table, and we are pulling up a seat, and we can't wait to learn. So let's start off with just this general idea of what do you think the most important part of the executive pastor relationship is? What really makes it thrive, in your opinion?
Jay, I appreciate this, and you are both just so great for anyone's ego today. So thank you. So your question, I was going to lead off with humility, but with that kind of intro, I think maybe I better hold off on that. You're asking about the relationship between the XP and the lead pastor. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I do believe it starts with just that, just a great relationship. I think that's so key to our team and how we work. I know that Josh has my back, and I know he knows I have his back. We support each other 100%. There's just amazing give and take in this relationship. And that doesn't mean when we are sitting there working through things, we push back a lot. And we can be passionate about what our stance is or what we're working toward. But when we finish that meeting and leave out of there, we're unified, and we serve together in unity in that way.
Let me lean in a little bit. So you say, just that, a relationship. So I am curious, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about how that relationship is built. Because there may be some pastors who are like, we have this work relationship, but is there a relationship that happens beyond the workplace? Because I would only maybe believe. I mean, maybe it's out that there's something that has to take place beyond just sitting around a table talking ministry. And side note, I know you guys went to, I think it was a Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, right?
That's right.
We
Right.
did.
So,
We got to watch the GOAT. We thought it was his last season, but he's
what
back.
happens? So let me lean into a little bit about like, what does that look like? And what does it look like for that relationship to build? How do you build a healthy relationship that is beyond just maybe necessarily the office?
Well, I do appreciate the question. It certainly takes time, and it's not something that you can force or rush. I think the fact that we have been working together now for over 2 years, I would say really even in the last 6 months, we've hit our stride in being able to anticipate or know what he's anticipating or needing, and vice versa. I think, and those kind of things that just help as we work together. I think that's been wonderful. And so, yes, that happens. Throughout the workday, we're intentional to be able to just break and let's go have lunch together and be able to close up what we're working on and just go have lunch, check on how our lives are going, how our families are doing. And then when we can have those opportunities to be able to be outside of the office with our spouses, with our families, and coming together in that way definitely helps a lot to be able to build that.
And that's been good for me to learn how each of us is wired, how we complement each other, and knowing that his strengths are typically the things I'm not good at, and that's being aware of that's part of the battle, and knowing that as a lead, as a senior pastor, whatever your title would be, as the one that is the key preacher on stage, we need people around us that make us better and that are willing to tell us what we need to hear in a way that is loving. And I think I value that so highly. And Alan does that so well with honesty, but also with encouragement. He does that well. And I think building that trust takes time. You need to hang out outside the office. You need to build relationships with each other's families. I mean, pray for one another and then have fun. Learn to have a good working relationship where you can be candid and honest, where you're not hiding things, but at the same time know that if you disagree, that doesn't mean that the world's falling apart, that it's a safe place to be able to work it out together.
Josh, that's exactly what I was thinking about. I had just the ability to be able to laugh at ourselves, and Josh is so great about that. I mean, we just laugh a lot, and be able to work that in with the work in which we're doing, just making it fun.
So I heard a handful of things there, just kind of maybe, and you can correct me if I've heard wrong, but I heard, this relationship is really the key behind it, is building a healthy relationship, and it takes time. You can't rush that. You can't rush time. Nothing can be rushed with time. It just takes time to get to know one another, to learn how each other functions and works. And, Josh, you said something along those lines, but also I highlighted the word intentional, because it's going to be intentional, because if you don't work at it, then it's not going to happen. If you just kind of do your own work and kind of go your separate ways, it's not going to work. And then I have this word fun that I wrote is, try to have fun with it. Try to have fun in the relationship and not let be all business. Right. So that's kind of where I highlighted this aspect of, when you come to the most important part is just building in that healthy relationship and rhythms with one another, time intentional, and make sure you enjoy the journey of getting to know one another and working alongside of one another. Is that fair, or would you like to?
Yeah, I think what Alan said earlier about having each other's back, I think of trust, that we might have to work through difficult things and go through difficult times with people in the church or a family that's in need, or we're trying to make a decision about something that's big. It's good for us to be honest face to face. But if once we leave with that plan in mind, and someone from the congregation or the community says something about Alan, or someone says something to him about me, we have each other's back. Like, we're not going to say, well, that wasn't up to me. I wish, because that happens a lot in ministry. I've been a part of that and seen how the trust and the way we speak about each other can really hurt that relationship. So
Let's talk about that a little bit more, because again, Alan mentioned, sitting around the table, you don't just the executive pastor is not a yes person, like, okay, yeah, whatever you want. There should be a healthy balance of pushback and willingness to like, let me press in on that and make sure I understand, or I can agree in love. I mean, disagree in love, right? So when those things happen, Alan, I really want to lean in, over the last 20 years of being executive pastor, I'm sure you've had your challenging moments. What, at the same kind of, sense, when I asked what was the most important part, I wonder what is the most challenging part of the executive pastor and pastor relationship? What becomes challenging in that?
Well, I think right off the bat, the position of the lead pastor is understood and it's accepted by the church. People know the role of the lead pastor. You get to the XP, on the other hand, and people are asking, what do you do? Most of the people have no idea what I do in any given day, and I'm okay with that. But they just the title itself, and I suppose that is because it does mean different things for different churches at times. I think that uncertainty is diminishing. I think people are beginning to have a greater understanding, but that's what I experienced a lot. Do you see that, Josh?
Yeah, I think, well, I think people that are outside the church, or some of my neighbors I've had that are unchurched, they don't know what any of us do. They think we just kind of walk up. I had one guy say, you just walk up there and talk, right? You don't even really practice. And I was thinking, man, I must be really bombing lately if that's what you think I do. But that was a few years ago. But yeah, I do think you're right. The XP title, probably, I don't know when they started using that. Years ago, was administration pastor or associate pastor, right. Or I'm sure there's another few titles. And really, when you say people don't always know what I do, really the question should either be, what is it that he doesn't do? Because he's leading staff, he's organizing, he's dealing with HR, finances, and so it can be a lot. And Josh, so trying to hone in on that's hard.
You sent me a picture last week. He was mopping the floor. I mean, he does it. He does it all. He does it all.
I mean, we're church planning, right? We're portable church, but yeah, he was over there mopping it. So I took a picture and sent it to Jay. But he's a servant. I mean, he's a servant leader. He represents what we want our people to learn. So it's not just in what he says, but in what he does. But yeah, I do think that is a challenge for that role, because it's probably not the newest title. I don't know when they started to use that in churches, but executive pastor could mean a lot of things to people.
But Jay, you asked about maybe in the past, some of the greater challenges, not in the here and now, but in my 20 years, I've worked with lead pastors that don't know how to let me help them. They really don't know how to. Of course, I view my role as I want to be able to take everything I can off the plate of the lead pastor, so he can focus on uniquely what he's called to do. And some people, whether they just don't know how, and sometimes I think there's an insecurity there that doesn't allow them to let go of things, and that can hinder the leadership growth of our staff when that happens.
That's good. That is good. We've talked a little bit about insecurity here on the podcast from in previous episodes, and so I think that is that can definitely be a challenge. I can see how that can be a major challenge, because again, I love what I'm hearing come from you, Alan, is this aspect of like, I want to take as much as I can off their plate. And I want to be able to support them in that role to where they can do what they've been called to do as the lead pastor, and to lead and to drive that vision, so that they can do that. I want to be able to run some things and do some things. But if an insecure pastor is struggling with that, they're going to have trouble letting you run in your lane. Maybe I'll use the idea of lanes, as we all have our lanes that we can run in. And if you're running in your lane and Josh is running in his lane, you guys are going to really make some headway forward. But if this lead pastor is always cutting you off in your lane, it's going to hinder both your growth and his growth, and ultimately the church's growth.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that we have processed and worked through really well, not just ourselves on our leadership team, but even from an elder body, and then defining lanes and who's responsible for what. And
Mhm.
and so that helps us to know who's got what role. And I always know Josh is welcome to come to my lane anytime he wants. I always just ask, just give me a turn signal when you do. I've had,
I love
I've
where this
had,
illustration's going.
That's good, isn't it? Yeah.
and I've had, I've been on staffs where there are pastors a pastor that just loves to walk in the room and throw a hand grenade in the room and then walk out. And then I'm sitting there trying to figure out how am I going to fix this with the staff, and just working through that. So just kind of working through those kind of things and understanding that that's some of the differences that what we have right now. There's, I think a challenge would be a lack of openness, and Josh models openness really well. He doesn't allow things to fester, and that confirms that level of trust that is needed. And that all ties in with just humility. And I think that's that incredibly important area in our lives that is so critical. And oftentimes, I've seen that lacking in staff leadership at times. But once again, Josh models that beautifully well. Our team.
I didn't pay him to say that, Jay.
Yeah.
It's okay if you did. I mean, if I had an XP, I'd pay him to say that. No, I'm joking. Go ahead.
Well, I think I've been around and seen different, relationships and working with different leaders, and I've been a youth pastor, been a campus pastor. Now I'm in the lead role. So I've kind of watched and I've tried to learn from things that didn't go well and say, okay, don't do that. And then learn from the other side of saying what's healthy. And I think working with Alan, when you work with someone who is gifted in other ways, that has an ability to think through details and think through, okay, here's the vision, here's things we need to look out for, here's opportunities. Man, it gives you so much peace as a lead pastor to go, man, this is where I think God wants us to go. Now, I use the word shoot holes, or the phrase shoot holes in it. That's kind of heavy, but like find the issues that could come up. Help me think through what would hinder this or be a problem or a hurdle. And he does that so well. And learning to trust him to be in a healthy guardrail is huge for our church and for our leaders and staff. And instead of me just coming in and saying, hey, let's do this thing, I want to know what they think, and they can be completely honest about it. It doesn't hurt it's just an idea. It's not my person. It's not me. It's and a lot of pastors, especially senior pastors, we are very sensitive. And if we have a vision and we say, I went to the mountaintop and I came home and God said, we're going to go do this. Boy, sometimes we can over spiritualize that and say, well, this is my God dream. Don't touch it. And I think that's dangerous when we're not willing to bring a plurality of elders and leaders around us to say, yeah, we're for each other, but hey, let's also be wise and listen. So,
yeah, I've heard it put this way, and it's this idea that a lead pastor, typically the one casting the vision, only sees it from a certain perspective. They only see it from the perspective of like, I see the destination there that we're heading towards, and this is where we're going to go, and this is where I believe God is telling us to go. And then I've heard that, a lot of times the XP then takes it and says, okay, that's where we're going. But I see all the trees. I see all the construction. I see all the road work. I see the potholes. I see the waterfalls. I see all the different hurdles that we have to overcome. And they bring those to the table. And what that can mean is a lot of times a lead pastor can get very frustrated at that point. What do you mean we can't just go there? The XP is then, well, it takes this, and this. And that healthy balance, that healthy relationship to go, okay, I see where you want to go. I see the direction you want to head. Now let me work on mobilizing the troops, aka staff, perhaps, or organizing the finances, or organizing the systems and processes in order to get to that destination where God has revealed that we should go. Would you say, Alan, that may be a healthy idea of how that works, or am I off in that? And that's fine if I'm off.
No, very, very much so. In fact, that was one of my greatest challenges when I first stepped into the role as an XP. Is had a lead pastor who would would share the vision. And so for me in my seat, I'm saying, okay, that means, okay, team or staff, okay, church, this is how we get there. And we start marching in this direction. But then next month, we're going off into this direction. And so the vision kept changing. The target kept moving. And so it was, when you ask what's challenging about that relationship, that was a hugely challenging moment for me, because I don't know where the target is. It keeps changing.
That can be frustrating. It sounds like my golf game. You're over here,
Yeah.
then you're over
Yeah.
here, then you're over here. You're never making progress going forward towards the goal because you don't even know where the goal's at. Like you're just over here, over here.
Yeah.
I can
I
see
think
that being extremely challenging.
well, we're guilty as pastors. We go to a conference, we hear some new stuff, we come back and go, man, I found the golden nugget. Literally, we're going to do this. And yes, can we tweak and improve? Yes, but man, I've seen that over and over again, and it's like whiplash.
Yeah, but something you said just a minute ago, I think it's on this next point, Jay, and that is we recognize how we process differently. Josh is very much an open processor. He talks it out. I don't. I prefer to have some time. I need to think about it, get it all figured out in my mind, and then I'll speak to it. And so I think we've grown to understand that about the way we process things, and we've worked through things. And I thought we had some planning this morning, and he gave kind of pulled the veil back enough yesterday afternoon for me to see where he was wanting to go with it. Gave me yesterday evening and this morning to be able to think through that, so that I wasn't just coming in and all of a sudden having to speak without a lot of thought behind it. So I appreciate that in that role in doing those things.
Well, this is super helpful. I hope if you're listening in today that you're taking notes and you're looking through this, but I couldn't help but process as we were going to have this conversation today, Josh, that, not every church has an executive pastor. Mm-hmm. Not every church is able to either fund that role or, have that kind of position around them. And I would venture to say most pastors who have an executive pastor would say it's definitely one of those things that has benefited the church and has been huge. But the reality is, with as many churches that are the size that they are, the average size of the church in America is not as large as some other churches. Executive pastors are not always on staff. Mm-hmm. So, Alan, I kind of want to have a brainstorm session with the three of us here, and think about the role of an executive pastor. And we talked a little bit about how important that is. And there is an added benefit, right? Alan, what would you say real quickly? What do you think one of the greatest benefit of having an executive pastor on staff is?
Well, I would use the example used to, and I'm old enough, you alluded to that at the beginning of the podcast, to remember when a mechanic could just take a wrench and his own strength and be able to overhaul an entire car. And yet in today's time, mechanics are specialized to work on very specific things and complex machines, and the ability to know how to use computers and all with diagnosing the problem of a car. And so I think the same is true in a church. We like it or not, we're having to specialize in many different areas. And I think that's what XPs are able to do in this process. And so there are different roles as an XP. The one that does everything that falls under that umbrella. Then there are those that are focused specifically on the ministries, maybe the planning, the strategies, the execution of it, or others that are more focused on the operations. And I had this conversation with Josh. I sense, he's never said it because he's hugely encouraging always, but I sense, where he came from, he was used to someone that took on more of the ministries side of it. My bent is more often on the operations. I enjoy the other very much, but when tasked with all of them, trying to have all of them there on your plate, I tend to move these off my desk quicker. And so I think that's been something that, as we continue to work, and my understanding what his greatest needs are out of me and my role is shifting and doing that. Now, to me, I get excited about that. Some of it I need to sharpen again. Some of it I need to learn again. But I love that aspect of continue to learn and grow, how to improve in certain areas that I'm tasked to do.
So I've just realized that I desperately need an executive pastor, because when it comes to mechanics, I just take a hammer to everything. It eventually works, but in the long haul, it's damaging.
Yeah.
It destroys everything. So no, great insight, great insight to that. But let's lean into a brainstorm sesh, because again, what are some things that a church can do if they don't have the means or the resources to have an executive pastor on their staff? So this is where it can get really practical for those that might be listening, going, well, this is great. I love the fact that you guys are talking about how awesome an executive pastor is, but this doesn't benefit me at all. I believe there's an opportunity here where we can say, hey, you know what? Even if you don't have the executive pastor role, you probably have someone sitting in your church, and it might be 3 or 4 people, not one person that's on staff, but 3 or 4 people that can specialize, is what you were just talking about.
Right.
So how can we encourage those that are listening and saying, hey, you may not be able to, with resources you have, hire an executive pastor, but this is what you can do to maybe come alongside and support you as you lead the church that God has put you in. So let's do a brainstorm session. What are some things that we can do to help people go, these are the resources you can do?
The first thing that comes to mind isn't exactly what your question is asking, but I'll slide it in there anyway. And that is, I was talking to Josh prior to my role here, and just the different dynamics in recent years hasn't given me the freedoms to do so. But one of the things I loved about my role and how God has shaped me and equipped me for this role is my ministry was, on my off days, going to small churches and helping them with their internal controls, getting their systems in place, helping them with policies, working through setting up their financials, things like that. And it was just a way to know that we were blessed as a church, and God has equipped me in these areas. That's how I can extend that, and that's how I turned my responsibilities into a ministry beyond the walls of our church.
I actually think that helps out drastically what we're talking about right now, because this is the church looking at a capital C versus a little c. That's exact. I actually think that fits perfectly in the conversation, because there should be partnerships with churches that are more resourced than churches that are not more researched, right? So if you're listening today and you have an executive pastor, you have a team of people who maybe you have the resources. Maybe there are other like-minded churches in your community, and you could take on the task of just making sure that you are available for those churches. Because I believe there's a huge benefit to that. If you could reach out to a younger church, or a younger church approaches you, which I'm going to get to in a minute, but a younger church approaches you saying, hey, we just need some help with operations. Yeah. Do you have the margin on your staff where you can go, okay, let's figure out how we can cut out a couple hours of our week to invest in this church? Because maybe one day they could have the resources if they can get the systems and processes and things like that in order to continue to function. Because right now they have one pastor perhaps on staff who's trying to do it all, and it's like me with a hammer on an engine, destroying everything because they don't know what to do. So I believe there's actually some benefits in that, of what you just said. So if you're a larger church or a church with more resources and you're able to help the smaller church in your community, maybe that's something you can brainstorm on how to do. And then in addition to that, if you're a church without an XP, maybe reach out to one of the churches that has more resources and say, hey, I could use a little assistance. And that takes humility, which we talked about a few minutes ago, of saying, hey, I could use some assistance. All right. You were going to say something.
Yeah. But understand, if you're that smaller church, we all do that same thing. We're all trying to network with the church that's gone before us, because, okay, so we're at the stage where we have an XP, but we're also moving into the next phase of growth pains. And what does that look like? So we work very hard to find and network with churches who have learned and gone before us and learn some hard lessons. So know that we all do that. So don't be afraid to just seek out, call up a church that has one. Truly, I would be shocked to think that we're not all just eager to just share what God's given us and taught us. And
yeah, leaders are
about that
learners,
way.
and I think being available, letting churches, let other leaders know that we're there, that we're available. I've learned so much by making phone calls over the years. Back when I was a youth pastor, we went to multi-site at one church. So I think I talked to 20 leaders around America that had growing youth ministries, or I knew of them, or someone recommended them. And I just asked for a few minutes and had a bunch of questions and developed a whole, just poured over it and said, okay, what can I learn from them? And it's not that it's all rocket science and building systems and processes and all the things that Alan does so well. It doesn't mean it's all brand new, but what I've learned is that we can have a great vision, a great worship experience, a great quote unquote ministry to people. But if we don't manage the resources God gives us in a healthy way, if that's not strong and healthy, just to build a strong, healthy church to support that ministry, man, it'll implode eventually. And so this side of ministry is so crucial of what exec and what that team that's developed on a church plant or a smaller church team is so vital, so that we're handling God's resources well and making wise choices as a team.
Yeah, I can't even tell you from my experience the amount of things that I've learned and the benefit I've gained from buying someone a cup of coffee and saying, hey, can I get 30 minutes with you and just run through some questions and things. There's been so much that it didn't cost me a lot. It just cost me a cup of coffee to have a conversation. And so, so much truth in that. And Alan, you didn't think that fit the question, but it totally fit the question more than you knew. But anyhow, again, let's, if we could, let's brainstorm a little bit more. What are some things that a church can do if they don't have the resources to have that XP on their staff and on their team? The partnership with another church is huge. I think it's crucial. Is there anything else you guys would add?
I'd say break it up into bite-sized pieces. Don't look at it as the whole and the position of it, but as you look at the giftedness and the skill level in your church, you will find somebody that can help you with HR, that can help you with the facilities. It has a great knowledge of insurance coverage, the finances, on the ministry side, somebody that's great at systems and can help you in areas like that. So instead of expecting them to do a range of what a full-time XP might do, choose. If they can take off any of your load by taking one or two of those things, that's better than you were yesterday.
I wholeheartedly, I mean, as a church planter, one of the things that you learn to do that. You're forced to do that. It's a survival method, right? You have to do that. But you would be surprised in your church who you have that attends and is regularly involved, that have the skill set that are being underutilized within your church. And it's not about getting more from your people. It's about leveraging. Because Alan, I'm gonna venture out and say this, but you absolutely love what you do.
I do. I do. Now, I'm what I love when you talk about the systems and everything. I do. If Josh has this great idea, I love to brainstorm every possible avenue of what's going to need to happen in order to bring that from starting point to finish. And then but my wiring is the type I prefer to just stay in the background and watch it function, and watch it roll. But I think that really helps us in our relationship as well. I don't need and I don't desire to be the out front person in that. I like the systems side of it.
Well, that's what I'm getting at, is you love doing that. And that's something it's like, I don't get how anyone could love a spreadsheet. I don't get it. I don't know why anybody would love a spreadsheet or formulas or any of that stuff.
Let me explain something. I agree. But when I send an Excel sheet to him that I've started that is very basic, okay, like a sermon series, planning, whatever, he will send it back and it's magical. It's like colorful. Everything makes sense.
That's because I got to understand. I got to just know what I'm doing with it. I don't know.
But I'm just letting you know.
But I don't like it. I don't want to create it. I don't want to do it. Like you forced me on this podcast to do things I don't like to do, but I do it. But I have a guy in our church who, for our finances, he's like, I love doing spreadsheets. I'm like, oh my goodness. But this is a guy who loves doing it. He needs to sit down.
That's not a discounted role. That's actually like And I know you're not saying
That's
that,
what I'm
but I'm
getting
saying
at is
that it's a
empower that
valuable
person.
skill. It's a skill and a heartbeat that is saying, I don't have to be the guy on stage. I don't have to be the person singing. I don't have to be whatever, but I see a huge blessing of being a part of seeing this whole organization, this whole church family work together for the sake of the gospel and develop systems and all those things, processes, making sure insurance, I mean, just the things that are behind the scenes, but are so crucial. If something happens, if there's an emergency, or if there's a family breakdown, we are prepared to care for them and help them. And Alan does that well. He helps connect people with the counseling. He's got a creative bent too, which is just a bonus. He has ability to see staging and design and being able to see kind of the vision come together there too. So he's kind of a little bit, you can't really peg him as just one side, one size fits all. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, can you make an Excel sheet magical? But he also is creative on stage. So he's really a lot of fun to work with.
He is the golden goose. The golden goose. I really listen. I'm gonna tag that somebody. I'm gonna do something. Maybe I'm gonna create the new, like, it's gonna be the new role on church staff. This is our
golden
lead
goose
pastor. This is our golden goose. This is our no more XP. Get rid of the XP. It's now the golden goose of ministry. I really do think this is one of those things that if a lead pastor, I mean, if you can go back and re-listen, or if you've taken notes, if there can be this healthy relationship between the XP and the lead pastor, and they can learn their lanes, they can learn how they can, roll together. If that can happen, it can be beautiful. In the same context with a church that doesn't have an XP, if you are a leader who can, give away ministry, you can empower other people to do the work of the ministry. By the way, that's biblical and that's what we're called to do. But if we can empower people to do the work, equip them to do the work of the ministry, man, you will see your ministry thrive. You'll see it thrive. And I think it's just powerful. So anything else on that, or any closing thoughts you guys might have?
Let me say this. I want to hear more from Alan, but I think for me, I'm learning in this season how to equip and be clear on saying, hey, take this and run with it. Here's my thoughts, or here's the goal, or whatever, the vision, and then entrusting him. I think I'm trying to do a better job of that. At times I can jump in and,
but of course, that takes time. And I deal with that as well in the areas that I'm handing off, to know, because there's some things that doesn't matter, but there's some things that we want to make sure we keep our thumbprint on that. And it has to have a certain level of excellence, a certain look for our culture that we're trying to develop, all those kind of things that we want to have some consistency to. And so yes, Josh does that very well.
Well, fellas, any closing thoughts, anything that you would like that we have not discussed here about this role that we want to leave our listeners with today?
This is a little bit out in the field, but what we didn't hit on is that, of course, I've been here 6 years now. Josh has been here a little over 2. But when we were working through that and through that process, we did spend a lot of time on understanding each other's temperament and what that looks like, working together ahead of time, and making sure that we are personalities that really will complement one another, work together. And so I think there is a little of that. That might be another story, another time, to know if you're in a position going either direction, that you're needing to fill a role, and the importance of going ahead and taking the time to do those kind of assessments.
That's good.
Yeah, I think learning to really know how we're wired, like you're saying, is huge, and knowing my weakness, how that can, if I'm not healthy, how that can hurt, or how in my strengths, how that encourages. So I think trying to be aware of my blind spots, knowing when I'm a verbal processor. We talked about that a little bit earlier. Like I'm struggling at times with doing that too much, and I'm learning not to do that with everybody on our team, or even in my family, because not everybody can handle that, or it's even wise to do that. So learning to say, hey, frame what I'm getting ready to do, saying, hey, right now I just need to talk this out. I'm not making a decision. I just need to kind of share this. And then once I do that, I'm beginning to put the pieces together. And I know that that's not how Alan might process it, but he's learned to go in a very nice way. I want you to be able to talk it out, and then I'm going to, of course, think through it and help you.
Right. When we had an opportunity like that just yesterday, if I'm tracking with you properly, where I like that he is processing out loud and allows me to kind of think along with him. If that's a little bit different, and so I do enjoy those kind of opportunities where we're really working through something where he's got something he's trying to really. It needs a sounding board, and in that sense, it works really well. If you're expecting me to come and think of a process, a creative way of getting from here to there on the spot, I prefer to noodle it in my head and then speak it later.
That's just difference in personalities, difference in the way people process things. And so, again, nothing is wrong with either one of them. They're just correct. That's how we're built and how we're put together. And again, as we've talked about multiple times, and really it seems a consistent theory is this idea that, the church is made up of many, many, many different kinds of personalities. And that's God and how he created us to be and work, function together as the local church. And so, Alan, I want to thank you for being our guest today on the Pastor Pod. As always, we want to thank you for listening in and joining us for another good conversation. Want to encourage you, if you have any questions or thoughts, you can reach out to us. thepastorpod@gmail.com is our email. You can follow us on social media and on Facebook and Twitter. And obviously, you're listening to this. We're on all those platforms that you can listen to a podcast. So from Josh, Alan, and myself and the Pastor Pod, thank you for joining us. Have a great week ahead of you.